Welcome back to another review and welcome to the inside of the Ford Territory. Now if you're wondering, Greg, we've never seen a proper Ford review on your channel. Well, you'd be right, because this is the very first Ford and hopefully the first of many more to come. So if we can all together just quickly say, welcome Ford, let's do that. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm gonna hope and pray that you all said welcome Ford. But for now, yes, this is the all-new Ford Territory. Let's see what it's all about. The all-new Ford Territory. So this isn't new territory for Ford. You see what I did there? They used to have a car named the Territory that died off many years ago, but it was also much larger and it kind of was replaced by the Everest of what you know today. But for quite a while now, Ford has been missing that car in its lineup that's been that medium to large size SUV that's not quite the Everest, but also slightly bigger than, let's say, the likes of the EcoSports that they had before. Because also they had a Cougar, which we all know. That Cougar was also then discontinued in South Africa for obvious reasons. But now there's been that gap, which they haven't filled for quite some time. So it's been nice to see that they've brought a car in to fill that gap. And I must say, it looks damn good. And maybe I'll start there, because from the outside, this is a very good looking SUV. It's modern. It's got all the good lines that you need. You can see that obviously it's a Ford because of the Ford badge. But from a design point of view, it's got some really good road presence. It's got some nice looking LED daytime running lights in the front, a big grille, the chrome elements on the grille, nice design from the bumpers to the front and the rear, LED rear tail lights that also kind of match and bring the overall look together. So a very good looking car. And what's good about the design is that there's 3 different trim levels that you can buy this new Territory in. There's the Ambiente, the Trend, as well as the Titanium. And depending on whichever one you get, you're going to get the same looking car. The only difference being the wheels. So here on the Trend, you've got the 18-inch alloys, which just look like standard wheels. There's nothing fancy about them. They're pretty bland, but again, they do the job. They give you enough room for some bigger tires, so that is going to aid in your riding comfort and make your overall drive pretty enjoyable. Powering this new Territory and the whole lineup is the same engine. It's a 1.8 litre EcoBoost or turbocharged, depending if you don't know what that means or not. It's a 4-cylinder and it puts out 138 kilowatts and 318 Newton meters of torque, which are some pretty good power figures in this category. Now I say in this category because I'll get the elephant out of the room right now, because I know that that's what the comments are going to say, and that's what all of my other videos on social media have said, that yes, this is pretty much a Chinese car. And as I said earlier, there's been a gap in the market for Ford in this particular segment. Now, they haven't had anything to sell, but while they haven't had anything to sell, there's been an influx of other cars that you can buy in this segment, and majority of them are Chinese. From the Havals to the JQs to the Cherries and the Omodas, throw in some of the Koreans like Hyundai and Kia. There's been a whole bunch of new cars that have come in that have been able to kind of find their space within the target markets and this audience, which Ford hasn't had. So yes, the elephant in the room here is that this is a Chinese Ford. So the dimensions, the overall look of the car is again quite Chinese. It looks very similar to a Haval H6, and this is actually built in China. It's a joint venture between Ford and I think it's JMC. And together they build this car, but at least it gets a Ford engine. So it isn't the actual Chinese engine and that part of things. The actual heart of this car is from a Ford, and it is an EcoBoost, which is what makes a big difference. And that's one of the big differences for me driving this car and those other Chinese cars, is that I've noticed that this drivetrain, which again is also very similar because it's got a 7-speed dual clutch transmission, which is like the rest of the other Chinese cars. But I've found that the way that it works together is more harmonious than the other Chinese. Now, it's not perfect, but I do feel that it drives a lot better. You don't have as much turbo lag as the other cars. So and I'm not trying to put foot in race here, but when you do get to a standstill, like I'm gonna do now, ooh, Lambo, as I'm gonna do now, just give me a couple seconds, 3, 2, 1, I'll put my foot down and the car goes. There's no lag, there's no the car deciding if it needs to be in first or second. It knows what it wants to do, it knows what it should be doing, and it does it quite well and better than the other Chinese cars that I've driven. And then talking a little bit more about the different trim levels that you get here, as I said, there are 3. So you get the Ambiente, which is your entry level, you then get the Trend, which is this one, and then you get the Titanium, which is the top spec. Now, looking at the Trend, which I'm in at the moment, you get a 12-inch display for your infotainment, you get a much smaller display for your driver, which is kind of half and half, because part of the display is actual lights that show your temperatures, and the other half is lights that show your fuel and stuff, and then in the middle there's your little screen, and they kind of make a circle go together. So I get what they're doing here, and obviously it makes the costs a little bit less because you don't have a full display. But if you do step up into the Titanium, you will get 2 12-inch displays here. Also, the interior is very comfortable. Now, this isn't leather, but it is a type of vinyl which looks and feels like leather. It is very comfortable. It is hard to tell the difference between this and leather. If you didn't know, you probably wouldn't know that it's not leather, but those that do know would know, if that even makes sense. So you don't get a full leather interior in this car, but you do get a full leather interior in the Titanium, and then in the Ambiente entry level, I think you're going to get a cloth interior. But throughout all of the different derivatives, you are going to get the same center tunnel here, and in this Trend you are getting wireless phone charging, the same as what you would get in the Titanium, which I don't think you're going to get in the entry level version. You're also going to get your gear selector, which is very familiar and similar to what you'll see in other Fords, as well as your electric park brake and some of the other shortcut buttons down here, as well as a volume control, which is nice that you don't have to do that through the infotainment. So Ford has taken any learnings from the other Chinese cars when people complain and say everything's done through the infotainment, especially volume. Well, they've taken that away and they've given you an actual volume dial here. But one complaint I have about the volume dial is that the little center picture turns with the dial. It doesn't stay straight. And that's just one of those little OCD things for me that if I could change it, I would. But otherwise, it's not the end of the world. It's a very good looking interior. But talking about the infotainment here, it does house pretty much all of the car settings. So you are going to have to dig into here for your climate control, which is always going to be a bugbear for people these days, and especially for me, I'm not a fan of that. But what they have done is given you some climate control shortcut buttons, which are haptic, just below the screen down here. Now, it's nice that they've given you haptic feedback, although it's still not the best solve. A separate climate control would be better, but at least they've given you that over here. And then looking at the steering wheel, which is also covered in that vinyl material, it's a nice design. It's flat bottomed, and you've got your controls for your cruise control, as well as your infotainment over here, and a button that's going to change if you're wanting to change the settings in your driver display, or if you wanted to change the volume, you'd use the same dial for that, but you have a setting that still toggle between the two so that you are able to do the same thing with the same dial, which I think is quite clever. And then looking at some of the other spec you don't get in here, so you are getting manually adjustable seats, you aren't getting a full 360 camera, you are only getting a reverse camera with park sensors around the car, which is, I think that's still okay. You aren't getting blind spot monitoring. That's the sort of stuff that you'll get when you step up a trim level. You aren't getting a panoramic sunroof that you will get with the Titanium, but you don't get with entry level and Trend. But otherwise, I think it's quite well appointed for what it is. Like I said, you've got the wireless phone charging. You do also have keyless entry and push button start. So there are some nice touches that you have in this car, as well as a power tailgate. So if I had to kind of select what might be the better one to choose in the range, I think it probably would be the Trend, in my opinion. Now, there's not a lot of tech inside here, and people might feel that there's not the best value for money, because if you compare it to some of the other competitors, you are lacking some tech and spec. But from a value point of view within this particular range, I think the Trend is the one to go for. And then looking at the pricing, it starts off with the Ambiente at 576,000 Rand, goes up to 632,000 Rand for the Trend, which I'm in at the moment, and then goes up to 707,000 for the Titanium, which is your top spec. Now, all of those prices don't include a service plan. Ford split them up, but what I will do is put on screen the prices for you with and without the service plan for each of the derivatives, so you can see which one you'd probably want to choose. And then looking at things that set this territory apart from its main rivals, which are the other Chinese cars. Now for me, that's going to be the engine, which is the 1.8 litre EcoBoost that puts out 138 kilowatts and 318 Newton meters. Now that is much more than what the others are giving out. Now the others are all powered by either a 1.5 litre or 1.6 litre, or if you step up into the Tiggo 8 Pro Max, it's then a 2 litre, which is then much bigger. But in this category, I do feel that this is probably the better engine to choose. And also from a fuel consumption point of view, the numbers aren't that bad for the 1.8 litre EcoBoost, right? So I'm getting between about 8 and 9 litres per 100. And I think Ford was claiming about 7, but I will put the correct figure on screen now. So to get 8s and 9s for me when I'm not doing long distance driving and being able to see how I can stretch that fuel, it's hard to actually see what those numbers are. But for me, with my short driving, the car idling while I'm reviewing it and checking it out, I don't think that fuel consumption is that bad at all. And then onto the practicality for this territory. So the space inside this car, like I said earlier in the video, there's quite a bit. So the car is a lot bigger than what it looks, especially from the inside. So from storage point of view, you do have obviously the wireless charging here, so if you aren't charging something, you can store stuff there. You've got some cup holders, you've got a little tray underneath the armrest, lots of space underneath here, and obviously space underneath your gear selector and this tunnel to store other stuff too. And that's where you'll find additional USBs and things like that. The door bins are also pretty decently sized. You can fit a nice water bottle there. You've got a nice sized cubby hole, but where this car really shines for me is the space in the rear. Now, if I was a passenger there doing some long distance driving, I'd be very happy because I haven't sat in a car with that much legroom in a long time. Now, this is in my driving position and I'm 1.87 meters tall, and you can see how much legroom I have in the back there. There's heaps. Now, you don't have the ability to slide the seats forward or backwards or like recline or do anything like that I've noticed. But the position that you're sitting in is also very comfortable, and I don't think I'd have anything to complain about if I was a passenger in the rear. The boot is also very big and uncomplicated. As I said, you've got an electric tailgate, so once you open that up, you get into the boot, which is just very flat. And if you lift up the floor there, you'll be able to see that you do have a space to have a spare wheel. So it's nice that you do have a spare wheel in this car and you don't have to rely on a tire repair kit when you urgently need to change a tire in a moment's notice. So I hate those kits and I love spare wheels. Now, if you're in the market for a new Ford Territory, then go check one out on changecars.co.za. They're a website that sells new and used cars, but the best thing about them is that they vet and check every single dealership that sells cars on their website, so they know exactly who they are and what they're selling, almost always guaranteeing the customer good quality service and a great product. Now, the other great thing about Change Cars is their website, which is almost like a hub for everything automotive. So you can go in there and you can watch car reviews, you can read articles, you can even do financial things like going to see what you can afford per month through their affordability calculator, as well as their monthly repayment calculator. You can also bring them quotes from other dealerships that aren't on Change Cars, and not only will they match that quote, but they'll beat it too. So there's a lot of great things associated with changecars.co.za that also associated with me, and they're a partner of Greg Dennis Reviews. So please go check them out. I know you won't be disappointed. And then onto the verdict in the form of the GDR test. Should you get it, should you drive it, or should you remove this from the list of cars that you're looking at? Now, I'm going to say go and drive this, only because this is a very competitive segment, and at the price point that this is at, and if I remember correctly, I said it was about 632,000 Rand, there's a lot that you can get from some of the other cars. Now, yes, I don't think you're going to get as much space and probably as much comfort as what you're getting in here, but you're getting a lot more spec and a lot more bells and whistles in terms of 360 cameras, blind spot monitoring, all the digital safety equipment, and a bigger driver's display, and a whole bunch of other cool stuff, which I think you're missing from this trend model at this price point. So go and drive this. I know you won't be disappointed by the way that the car drives, because I feel like it's got a very good drivetrain, and the standard 7-speed dual clutch that's in here and the others is working more harmoniously with this EcoBoost than it is in some of the other competitors. So that's one of the main selling points for me in this car, is how it drives. So go and check it out. I know that you're going to get a lot of space, you're going to get some good drive quality, but I know you are missing out on some of the tech and fancy stuff that the others are showing. So go and see if you'd rather have a Ford badge on the front of your Chinese SUV, or would you rather stick with some of the competitors? But let me know down below what you would go do, and thanks for watching this Greg Dennis review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned a little bit more about the new Ford Territory, and thank you to Ford for bringing their first car onto the channel for review. Now, if you did enjoy this, please really drop a like below, and if you want to see other car content and other car reviews and things like that, then make sure that you're subscribed. And until then, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.